¿Y con China?
Yo no haría negocios con China.
Pero es el segundo socio comercial de la Argentina, palo a palo con Brasil. Si rompemos relaciones con China sería una tragedia macroeconómica, Javier.
No, es falso que sería una tragedia macroeconómica. Podríamos hacer transacciones con el lado civilizado de la vida,
¿Cuál es el lado civilizado de la vida?
Occidente. O sea, yo, digamos, no hago transacciones con comunistas.
Alright guys, so it seems Argentina is facing reality. This is one of the most epic U-turns in history, and this reveals one economic truth. Decoupling with China is simply impossible. If you want to sell to over 1 billion people, access cheap goods and get financial help, breaking away is simply crazy. We know Milei wants to dollarize his economy, which means replacing the Argentine peso with the US dollar as the national currency. But he's starting to face the truth. There simply aren't enough dollars circulating in his economy. Argentina has been buying dollars to rebuild their reserves. However, in June, their purchases have stalled from nearly $2.5 billion in May to nearly zero. And this is a big problem. To dollarize your economy, you obviously need a ton of dollars to circulate around. However, Milei is still facing two crises that's forcing him to burn through his reserves. Firstly, Argentina still isn't exporting enough to the world. As an emerging economy, that's the only way to earn dollars. Issuing new dollar bonds isn't possible for Argentina. The interest rate on them will easily exceed double digits. The odds of default are still very high. The second problem is Milei defending the peso's exchange rate. He's burning through a mountain of dollars to prop the currency up. Now, if you have been to Argentina, there are two exchange rates there. The official rate is around 900 pesos per dollar, but on the street, it's well above 1300 pesos. There's a big gap between those two. And you might be wondering, why doesn't Milei just let things rip? Why not allow a complete devaluation of the peso? If that suddenly happens, inflation will just spike through the roof. Argentine bonds will implode and the demand for dollars will skyrocket. In other words, there will be chaos in the streets. More people will be plunged into poverty, and Milei doesn't want to collapse the economy in a hurry, and he isn't really ready for dollarization either. His central bank is stuck in a doom loop. They must constantly spend dollars to defend the currency, but in doing so, they can't build up enough reserves to dollarize the economy. So to fulfill his fantasy, Milei needs the help of China, and that's why he's repenting. Hilarious if you think about it. This is the ultimate 180 in direction. Milei realizes that the US isn't coming to save Argentina. I guess he got nothing in return for buying those F-16 fighter jets. Since 2020, China has been the biggest trading partner in Latin America. Except for Colombia, China's dominating trade in the continent. In Brazil, Chile, and Argentina, China's trade is significantly larger than the US, so there are existing economic ties that Milei can leverage on. He's finally beginning to see the light. And guess what he immediately went for? China's RMB swap line. As we established earlier, Argentina has a big deficit of dollars. Not only is Milei burning billions to prevent a peso collapse, but importing things into the country requires dollars as well. And that's why the Argentine central bankers scrambled all the way to Beijing. They managed to get an extension of their currency swap line with China. The Chinese allowed Milei to extend his use of $5 billion or 35 billion yuan. This is critical because if the extension wasn't granted, Argentina will have to pay China back the money which they simply don't have. A swap line is pretty simple. Milei gets to exchange pesos, which are devaluing fast, for the more valuable Chinese yuan, and after some time, both countries swap the currencies back. And with this, Argentina can access the Chinese currency to buy imports like electronics and vehicles. It's really important to understand how dependent Argentina is on the currency swap line. It's essentially their economic lifeline when they have a chronic dollar shortage. From 2014 to 2021, Argentina used this swap line every single year. This hit an incredible $20 billion at the peak, and that's how far things went. It allowed the country to avoid using dollars and still import stuff. They could use the yuan, the RMB to pay down their debt to the IMF as well. Dollarizing your economy isn't very simple. Milei is beginning to realize that it gets extra difficult when your own economy is collapsing and you owe the world a ton of money. Milei is trying to put out multiple fires at once, and that's why he can't afford to decouple with China. His "I won't trade with communists" spiel is only skin deep. And here's how serious Argentina's debt problem really is. Out of all the emerging economies, they are the biggest debtor nation to the IMF. We are talking about $43 billion. Argentina accounts for 30% of the entire loan book. That's more than Egypt, Ukraine, and Pakistan combined. And the IMF wants their money back starting this year. In 2024, Milei has to pay back the fund $3.2 billion worth, and if he can't pay that down, he can kiss goodbye to any new deal with the IMF. And where's he going to conjure the money from? Over the next 8 years, he will have to pay back at least $5 billion in principal and interest every single year. All this while trying to increase his reserves of US dollars. Getting a swap line from China is just a band-aid. Remember, this is money that still needs to be paid back with some interest. You can't really extend and pretend forever. The amount will snowball until it crushes your economy. What Argentina needs is to expand trade with their biggest economic partner. And that's why it's really unwise to mix foreign policy with business. Because when you do a U-turn, it really makes you look very, very silly.
Muy apropiado por el nuevo gobierno que hay en Argentina, de la libertad avanza, por el contexto en el mundo y porque, bueno, es una casualidad que sean 10 años, pero tenemos ya bases firmes. Pudimos mantener una buena relación. Ahora, teniendo mucho más convicción de qué es lo que hay que hacer, mejor será.
And that was the Foreign Minister of Argentina, Diana Mondino. We are reaching epic levels of comedy. Remember, this was the same lady who said, "We will not enter BRICS." So there's a lot of backtracking here. Argentina might have abandoned BRICS, but they definitely can't decouple from China. The challenge Argentina faces is falling agricultural exports. Poor weather conditions like drought is a problem. Tough competition from Brazil is another. But the bigger problem is the crazy taxes Milei imposes on food exports to the world. So if you're a farmer and you export soybeans, you have to pay 33% of the value in taxes. If you export wheat, corn, or meat, you pay 15%. That's a very draconian tax that removes any incentive to grow food and export them out. Argentina is essentially trapped. Milei has to impose taxes to bring in dollar revenue for the government. Remember, he needs to refill the reserves and pay down the IMF debt as well. It's a big reason why Argentina's corn production is just so low. This year alone, they will only produce 40 million tons. Compared to the other exporters like the US and Brazil, Malay's corn industry is almost non-existent. He needs to improve selling margins to help farmers earn more. That way, they can pay the taxes and have enough profit to grow more corn. So the only option left is to find more buyers for your food exports. And guess who's the biggest buyer on block? Once again, it's China. It's really becoming a recurring theme here. China imports the most amount of food in the world. In total, they brought in nearly $140 billion worth of grains, wheat, and meat last year. Because of their huge population, Beijing imports a ton of food from the world. And this demand is only going to grow as more people enter the middle class. And this is a clear reason why Argentina can't afford to decouple with China. It's no surprise that Argentina is about to ship corn to China for the first time in 15 years. Beijing approved the trade and now Milei can export his food to the world's biggest consumer. And this allows farmers to earn more and hopefully as a result, they also grow more corn. That's the only way left to bring in more dollars. It's really essential to understand this is a win-win for China as well. Argentina might be begging Beijing for help, but it's also in President Xi's interest to help. Because the West is decoupling with China, companies they obviously need to find new markets to sell to. Latin America is the perfect place for China to build their new customer base. Take Brazil for example. As the US moves away, China's EV giants are moving in to fill the gap. Companies like BYD are investing into Brazil, and here's why. Chinese brands are dominating Brazil's EV market. BYD and Great Wall Motors have nearly 90% of the entire market. It's effectively a duopoly. Latin America is a greenfield market with a ton of untapped potential. Their customer base is growing while the West is shrinking. So it makes sense for China to build good relations there. This is more or less their classic playbook. Build up your customer markets from scratch. Chinese money is flowing to Latin America to make the country more developed and richer. And as more people move into the middle class, they have more money to spend. They start buying more Chinese products like solar panels and EVs. And this is called vendor financing. It's a winning strategy for China. As of April this year, China's exports of EVs to Brazil hit 20,000 cars. That is a lot of units, and the growth rate is simply phenomenal. Just imagine once the BYD factory comes online in Brazil, more cars will fly off the shelves. China can decouple further from Western markets while Brazil grows their economy. So if you're Argentina and you see this, you'd be jealous as well. Chinese money is pouring to Brazil and you want some of that yourself. And that's why we have Milei eating humble pie, eating his own words, and doing a 180. If he wants to rescue Argentina from economic ruin, he'll need Chinese money coming in.
Vamos a necesitar mucha infraestructura. Algunas de esas iniciativas están dentro de la franja de la ruta. Energía, puentes, caminos, muchísimos elementos en los cuales claramente China está ya interesado. Algunos de estos elementos fueron identificados y, de nuevo, es una oportunidad para pegar un gran salto para la economía argentina. Tenemos posibilidad de tener gas, de tener electricidad, de tener hidrógeno verde, de tener represas para energía hidroeléctrica. Tenemos en todas alguna posibilidad. China puede participar en todas las que a algún inversor chino le parezca interesante.
They need the money and the investments to grow the company. And on the surface, they will shun the BRICS and they'll preach democracy all day. But when it comes to economic reality, Argentina will move closer and closer to China. It's the only logical choice left. But let me know what you think. Will Argentina trade more with China? And will they U-turn and join BRICS in the future one day? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.